would be an ecumenical matter.
Hello and welcome to Ecumenical Matters, the Father Ted podcast. Today we're discussing the Passion of St Tibulus, the third episode of the first season, first shown on the 5th of May 1995. I'm here discussing today with a special guest, Derm. Derm is a video and voiceover artist, so if you want to give us a rundown of what you've been up to recently there, Derm.
Well, I actually run a current YouTube channel. I do voiceovers for video games and small projects, independent gaming in Northern Ireland. I also write articles and do photography, and I'm a man who actually has many talents.
Good. What's the YouTube channel? Where can people find
the
that?
YouTube channel, you can get me on Pastiche of Skin, and my website is pasticheoflife.com, so that kind of aggregates all the stuff if you want to check out my voice work and any animations that I've actually done over the last couple of years.
Perfect, yeah. And here, as always, is Ash on our tech desk. And do you want to say hello, Ash, to see if we can hear you?
I do need some sound effects, I think, for next week.
We should get some sound effects in so we can put them in. Yeah, nice little slide whistle.
It's Badger and the Boys at crash time.
We'll get all them for you for next week. So basically, we're looking this week at the Passion of St Tibulus, and this is by far and away one of the most stone cold classic episodes of Father Ted of all time.
Yeah, it's so good.
It is gone beyond, it's transcended just merely an episode of TV show now. Down With That Sort of Thing has become one of the most...
careful now, it's not actually being used.
Yeah, careful now. Down With That Sort of Thing. It's popped up everywhere in real life, in real protests, and just to take the piss out of the protest, or to take the piss out of the fact they have to protest, or just to remind people that they saw Father Ted once and have a bit of a laugh with it.
I do like that because it's used so often now. It's actually just that this is all one big joke that we even have to be here today.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It comes through in that episode so well. They don't want to be there, but they're still protesting.
Well, there's only going to be 7 people in the cinema that doesn't open for 7 hours. I'll just do a quick rundown of where places that that sign has showed up, actually. One of the ones was a Tory Party conference in 2013 when the Tories were, being arseholes, as they always are. The water charges protest in Dublin, I suppose that's a pretty easy link to get to. The water charges are very unpopular in the Republic of Ireland, and people are coming out in the streets in their hundreds of thousands of an island.
It's probably the most politest complaint I've actually heard about the water charges. Everything else is actually the fact that it's been quite virulent and angry. This is actually the tamest thing.
Yeah. This is the safe for work version of the protest. A few other places. The Irish fans, 2 Irish fans, there's actually a very famous photo of two lads with Ireland jerseys standing in front of a whole line of riot police in Poland during the Euro 2012. Was careful out, Down With That Sort of Thing. And the Irish fans in Poland were, praised for how much fun they had, how much festivities they brought to the whole event.
And there was a little to no aggression because it's kind of like that was the mantra.
Exactly. And the one that I want to ask you specifically about, Derm, and I found this from the IMDb page. It shows up in a Warhammer game. A group of goblins, apparently called Empire Flagellants, have a sign that also says Down With This Sort of Thing. Can you expand on that a wee bit?
I think it's goblins of flatulence. You can tell it's actually almost like a mimetic joke to actually have anyway, because it doesn't just appear in those signs. It's one of many signs they have up, but that shows how culturally penetrative Father Ted is. It's everywhere. It is a TV trope for just calm down, it's not that bad.
Well, exactly. I mean, it has showed up everywhere, and 20 years later people still recognise it, still immediately get it. And it stems from this episode, and the fact that I was surprised at this myself, I think you were last week as well, Aish, that this is the 3rd episode. But even more surprising, this was actually supposed to be the 1st episode. Did you know that? Yeah,
I did. It's one of those things with the show that whenever they do schedule for 1st episode, 3rd episode, this probably was actually the 1st episode in other countries. I don't know which ones was the airing order, but you can probably check it up with Wikipedia or whatever has actually airing order for different countries. But the same as shows like Firefly, where the 1st episode was actually the 3rd episode, and they kind of rotated around, mattering on what would be currently funny for the time, because what was relevant at the time whenever the episode came out, whenever it landed in America or landed in France or whatever, what would have got people's attention immediately for its content, and that's probably the reason why they choose that episode over others.
Well, exactly.
Rather than being just Irish-based comedy.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very true. Actually, the fact that it is a lot of stuff in the episode, I will discuss it over the course of the show, that they do actually have a few little Irish references that maybe don't travel well. But what they did actually end up going with was "Good Luck, Father Ted," and that was the one where it set up the island rather than set up the characters. Me and Vince discussed this at the time. It was a very interesting path to take, sort of editorially, that they decided to go with that, because this one, much more obvious examples of them actually introducing the characters. They're playing Cluedo with the Cuban priest,
Father Hernandez.
And they actually go round the characters and he actually names them all.
Yeah.
So that's a very instant. Okay, that must have been the first
Scripting
episode.
wise, you can see it very easily.
Yeah, there's little writerly prompts where you can see that was actually supposed to be the first episode. But we'll go in anyway.
There's actually a little moment with Hernandez, though. It's somebody uses the internet phrase, a big-lipped alligator moment. He appears, he does his thing, and he doesn't really involve in anything else in the episode.
Yeah, this is true. He just disappears completely from the series. There's never any mention of him hiding her tail again.
And he opens it.
Yeah, he's the first person on the screen, and yet. If this was the first episode of the series of all time, you'd be expecting them to show up somewhere.
Exactly.
Because they do actually have a little bit of a through line through the episodes. It's not completely.
People exist in this world.
Yes, exactly.
One hit jokes.
That character is actually played by an Indian actor, which I found interesting.
An Indian actor playing a Cuban?
A Cuban, yeah. So there was a bit of a controversy. We've been watching, what's the show? The Aziz show? Aziz
Master of None.
Master of None. There was a big controversy about, do you remember Short Circuit?
Short Circuit, and I think he was my favourite Indian.
Yeah, exactly. So this is almost the reverse. An Indian character, or an Indian actor playing a character from another country completely.
They're complaining about this in Doctor Strange, aren't they now?
Yeah, well, the big one in Doctor Strange is that Tilda Swinton is playing the ancient one, but there's a lot of political awkwardness about that because it's meant to be Tibetan, but they want the movie to show in China, so they can't have it be Tibetan, and to cast a Chinese person as a Tibetan would be... Are you insane?
Right,
so they decided to change it so that she's a Celt, and then that's kind of...
so they changed the actual character. Okay, so I suppose that's a bit of a workaround, but the Scarlett Johansson thing...
Scarlett Johansson for Ghost in the Shell, that's a bit... Especially once it came out that they tried to change her looks with CGI, which was used in Cloud Atlas for Hugo Weaving and other characters.
But so that's just nice little aside.
This is the kind of things I do in my show. I'm sorry we overtaken it.
No, it's cool. No, I asked you. It's all good. So we first see them, and they're actually playing Cluedo with Father Hernandez. Now, have you ever played Cluedo?
Yes.
Have you? I actually love Cluedo.
They do take a long time.
Yeah, but I've only played it 2 or 3 times. I've seen it on TV much more than I've ever played it.
What do you mean, the movie?
I haven't actually seen the movie, no. But yeah, what do you think of it, Ash?
I can't remember playing it recently, but I definitely had it in the house.
I do remember, nearly every time I've played it, it generally doesn't end because it gets a table flip.
Oh, does it? Okay. But that's Monopoly for me in my household. Monopoly, because there is no actual end game, or every time you think you're at it, they've got another way out of borrowing money from the bank or selling their properties and stuff.
Yeah.
You cannot eliminate players in Monopoly. It lasts for fucking days.
But it's just the fact of how economically feasible are you? Well, with Cluedo though, it does feel like it should have an end point. It's just with these 3 gentlemen sitting around the table as well. It's almost like it's bizarre that their communication is so clear. Whether it's they're maybe trying to discover somebody who's a murderer, but one of them's not speaking the same language as the other at the table.
But yeah, I wanted to bring that up actually. So they dubbed Father Hernandez with an English language dub.
I love it.
It's a brilliant joke. It's brilliant. It works brilliantly with the episode because obviously Ted and Dougal, if you want to say in kayfabe, are hearing someone speaking Spanish, but they can still completely understand them, and so can Mrs Doyle because she reacts to his leers by sort of storming out of the room. Now, I don't know this for certain, but I think that might have been a play on... There was a time when Sinn Féin were trying to get more Republican viewpoints onto news and stuff, and Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness and everything were on BBC News. Margaret Thatcher insisted they'd never be allowed to show their actual voices, so the BBC News would have a video of Gerry Adams explaining why such and such and such and such, but it would have an actor speaking the exact same words as he was over his visuals. So it was absolutely bizarre. It was clear.
What accent?
Well, a Belfast accent. So do you know the guy from Get My Headpiece? The guy with the beard.
Tim McGarry.
Tim McGarry. So that was actually one of his early gigs.
Was doing that voice. That's amazing.
Yeah. So it was clearly not Gerry Adams' voice, and he was clearly speaking English. But they decided that this is how to, deprive them of the oxygen of publicity. Now, I don't know if that's what Graham Linton and Arthur Matthews were intending to do.
Yeah.
But that's certainly what came into my head.
It's brilliant because it's such a generic Jared's voice, it sounds like it's coming out of a voice synthesizer.
Yes.
It's so monotone, but the guy's obviously quite upbeat and changes his tone as he's talking.
Yes.
It's just like he completely eradicates any sense of emotion in his voice, but you can tell that he's actually being evocative. And then I can imagine that being the same with somebody trying to give a delivered, meaningful speech and then just have somebody deadpan it over the top of what they're saying.
Yeah. We will never surrender. We will never surrender.
It loses its vivant.
Yeah, and one of the first things that actually comes up here is that Ted actually misses the buzz of the big city. Now, we've seen this in the 2 earlier episodes, so they actually have been hammering this home quite a lot in the first 3 episodes. He actually says those words, I miss the buzz of the big city, so he's really frustrated by being stuck on the island. But we do get a clue of his background. He came from Wexford, it was his former parish.
Oh, that's a big smoke.
Yeah, well, do you know anything about Wexford? Because I know
I know I woke up in Wexford one time and I didn't know how I got there on a Sunday morning, but that's a story for another day.
Where did you start off?
I think I was getting a ferry from Wales.
Bloody hell.
Different landmass.
Yeah, that was an interesting night. But just the thing that I wake up in Wexford on a Sunday morning, and it was essentially what it ended up being. I was like, woke up in Wexford on a Sunday morning, and it's not exactly the most bustling city in the world on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m.
That's the first lines of your big blues hit. Bruce Springsteen would eat that up. But yes, and we have a clip here. Now, the first mention of one of the most significant secondary characters on the show, pretty much the big villain of the show, is Len Brennan, the bishop of their parish. Yeah. And we can hear what they think of Len. Bishop Brennan has actually done the dirty, and he's got a woman pregnant. Now, this is a big scandal, because this is actually definitely based on a real situation with the Bishop of Galway. And I did a bit of research. I read one article on politico.ie. The man's name was Eamon Casey. Now, he actually was much more prominent within the church than I actually realised. He founded the homeless charity Shelter, which is still going very strong at the minute. It's very prominent in London, especially at the minute, because homelessness is becoming a serious big issue since the Tories came back in. He was a bit of a petrolhead. He loved his fast cars, apparently. He allowed a young woman whose marriage had broke down to live in his parochial house. This was Annie Murphy, and what happened then was they fell into a relationship, and she got pregnant. Now, he wanted to push for an adoption, but she didn't want to give up her baby, so she fled eventually to Connecticut in America. So even that's mentioned, he's got a baby in America.
Yeah. They couldn't get any more on the nose, really.
Yeah, I think they wanted to just bring up every detail about it. Like I said, he was a bit of a rock and roll priest. He was a bit of a celebrity by the looks of things. So he sang on the Late Late Show as a part of a fundraiser for Trócaire. Trócaire's
he did have Casey has a very public image, like, at the time.
Okay, see, I didn't realise. I thought he was just known as the Bishop of Galway.
No. I mean, there's a song Christy Moore sings called Casey.
Casey, you're the devil.
I don't think it's actually that one, but there is a Casey song, I know. Right,
and it's about the Bishop of Galway. I must look that up.
I think it's more referential rather than actually being really directly about his misdemeanors, but it might be just about him being a bit of a lad.
Well, see, the thing was, like, that was the biggest controversy in Ireland. Probably since partition, like since the foundation of the state, that
fundamentally
a priest had got a woman pregnant, a bishop,
the people that we trust the most.
Exactly. So like there was a big hoo-ha about this, and what we've become to learn about the Catholic Church since. I mean, what he did was absolutely nothing. Like, he had a child with a consenting adult.
And whenever it did come to light, he resigned and walked away, and then continued his missionary work outside of that. Just like he didn't leave the faith in any shape or form. He just left the position where he was not allowed to have a family like that, and just went and did other things to help people. The least harmful thing you can probably imagine. Possibly there might be a little bit of an idea that there would be somebody in a fragile or humble situation that could have gone wrong, but in fact the support and everything was there afterwards. He didn't run off, as far as I know.
He definitely provided some financial support, and as you say, he resigned as soon as he realised the story was going to go public. He offered his resignation, and then the next day she had an interview on RT Radio. And just give all the details, and he said that this is what I've done. I'm sorry, this is my son, and such and such. There was a bit of controversy in that he had used parish funds to help for college education for the son. So that might be
that's the money. In fact, the money side it always comes back to the money.
Yeah, and this is it.
The money,
because he signed over a check for $125,000, which was a bloody lot of money even for a bishop, especially in Ireland back then. So Like, he can't have got that from his own personal funds.
Unless he had been saving very, very wisely.
Yeah.
But the investing well. Whenever it came out publicly and she had actually done the open interviews and stuff, like years later, she did a tell-all book thing as well whenever it separated off. But I think that one moment caused a massive rift in trust that essentially went like, no, the priest who comes around your house on the Sunday and you give him the sheafs of ham and all the tea in the world, why are you here?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that one moment of Bishop Galway being outed as, a heterosexual man.
A heterosexual man that just did what he wanted to do and probably should have owned up to it a lot earlier.
Well, it's been attributed to breaking down the authority of the Catholic Church in Ireland. And I would say, I think Father Ted probably did that, if not more so than definitely as much, because I was of the age, and you were probably as well, that when we were watching it, I remember a priest coming into the classroom at school and we would have to drop everything. It could be like 2 days before the 11 plus. Yeah. And it wouldn't matter. You had to drop everything and listen to him rattle on for an hour and a half.
Oh yeah, definitely, man.
And you have to stand up as soon as he walks through the door, and then, hello, Father, and then you have to wait for him to let you sit down and stuff. And it's like, even as a child, I had a healthy distrust of authority, but even then, I would have still been everybody who would have been a child at that age would still understand that you stop what you're doing. The level of respect was ingratiated by that collar, like exactly. Whereas Father Ted came along and just completely punctured every ounce of reverence you have to have for these people, because they are, like, as the show shows,
they're flawed human beings.
Exactly, and they're making stupid, silly mistakes as well, and they are just, the whole situation of the fact that they live like that is funny.
Yeah, their world where they actually are in is funnier than them doing something wrong. Like even the backstory of Brennan being who he is in this episode is actually the least funny thing about the episode. Is just like, this is what we're going to use as fuel, but other than that, everything else around this is actually the funny part. And
it actually gives Bishop Brennan a sympathetic side as well, which you don't see in many other episodes that he's
many other villains either, and just in general, as a comedy foil.
Like, what is it, about 30 seconds of video clip that they show at the end, which we'll talk about, but that it gives them total humanity then. But yeah, going back to like when you were growing up, like when were you watching Father Ted? Like, were you watching it on TV and stuff?
Yeah, man. Father Ted I watched as a broadcast at the time. It was event television, because it was before pre-recording everything and having it on demand and stuff. It's really nice to have it on demand now to go back and rewatch it, because doing something like this was really good to get the giggles in from it. But I mean, it impacted me enough that I remember where I was when I got news of Derm McGuigan's death. Like,
oh really?
I know exactly where I was. I was standing inside, I don't know, there was a GameStop or Game or one of those video game stores actually up in Belfast, and somebody told me, and I didn't know.
You must have just knocked you flat, did it?
I stopped what I was doing and kind of wandered over to the DVD section, and they actually had copies of it sitting there. I was like looking at it, going like, wow.
So some randomer just came up and said that to you? Or?
It was a conversation I was having with somebody in the store. Like, whenever you're a kid, you hang around stores, you don't really buy anything for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So I was actually up in Belfast, and somebody else was off watching it somewhere else. So I was like browsing games and looking and see what was in pre-owned and all that kind of stuff. And ended up somebody just brought up a conversation channel about like funny shows, and somebody told me like they'd heard earlier on the day. I was like, wow,
right.
It knocked me flat for a good few minutes before I kind of realized afterwards. And the fact that the show does live on so well beyond the people who have actually passed away so early after the show was finished as well.
Well, this is exactly it. I mean, he died about 2 days after they finished shooting the last episode, I think. From what I remember, I've seen in a documentary, I think that he was sick, but he had sort of kept it quiet while they were recording the last series. But yeah, I mean, so somebody had to tell you in a shop you didn't have a Celebrity Jets Twitter feed. That's what we don't have. We don't have the Deadpool going where you get a notification in case your bet came through. Yeah. That was probably one of the last few probably celebrity deaths that I would have actually been like, just a random stranger told me, and actually like it was that important that everybody knew a little bit over here. Well, I remember my aunt told me, and she knew him before he was in Father Ted, and she was really upset by it. I mean, what have I been? I was about 12 at the time, and I didn't really pass much remarks on it. I generally don't. I don't really get upset by celebrity deaths.
You knew him personally, or just knew him in stuff on TV?
Knew him in stuff on TV. Sorry,
I was worried. I was like, obviously, should be very upset with a personal friend.
Sorry, I'll clarify that. Yeah, she knew him from stuff on TV because she was an avid RT watcher.
So.
That was a shock. If I had been maybe a bit older, it probably would have shocked me even more.
Because you would have connected with the content a bit more. Because even being like that young, that you don't get all the jokes in Father Ted. Like, I mean, that's why everybody's probably watched it at least 4 more times, beginning to end, sitting in a university dorm room rather than actually sitting and watching it on TV when it first broadcast. It's one of those shows that was infinitely replayable because it was short, easy, and really, really funny.
Yeah.
And stood the test of time.
Well, my brother's a massive fan of it, and he was born in 1986.
Yeah,
so.
you know.
And they're still not.
I believe it was Professor Green on the dance floor with the hot mix.
Very good, very good.
Thank you.
He's down with the kids, you see that?
Oh yeah, I'm down with the kids.
Yeah. I suppose one of the things they did have to tackle at the time was the fact there was a Catholic
Divides.
Yeah, and they had to see what the Protestants were up to. Now they did keep the rivalry friendly, which I think, you know, in England and in the Republic of Ireland, the rivalry between the churches within Christianity is quite cordial. You know, but you get to where we are now in Belfast, it's a bit more.
It's a place and a time.
Yeah.
With Father Ted as a show, it always made jokes about denominations and everybody else going like, we're all one big joke, really, are we?
Yeah.
It's just the fact it's a different form of stand-up.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, see, I didn't realise this either when I was watching it at the time. There was a lot of comedians who were using the priest and the priest on his pulpit as their sort of outlet. Derm McGuigan had actually had a character like that. Arthur Matthews had a character like that. But there was another comedian who was very, you know, prominent, and he managed to get crossed over to England and everything, which was a big deal.
I think even like there was a whole split of American comics that had that kind of proselytizing kind of comedy. I mean, even people like Bill Hicks and stuff as well, and people who steal from Bill Hicks like Dennis Leary. Essentially had that same kind of like, well, I am standing in the pulpit and this is my people and you will listen to me as a congregation, that kind of had a cult of personality behind them, which is what the church was. It was a cult of personality of who's behind that pulpit. So if you can sit there, it's like watching those people who have that time on the pulpit and them in the back green room just like have a fag and just have a wee joking between themselves, and they tell them the world's worst jokes because they can get away with it now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to show another way that the show is dated a wee bit. Now it's actually not too bad when Dougal gets the video, as he says, from the Cuban priest. From what I could gather from the video, it was a JVC. Yeah. But it had a 3-week pre-record feature, which is actually quite good.
I'm still alive of the day where I remember you rented the videotape player with the tape.
Bloody hell.
Back in the day, I used to rent the VHS player for a week and rent the tape for a day, and then you had to actually like bring the tape back, and that was the way they guaranteed your deposit kind of thing on the tape. So you came back day after day to get different tapes, and you rented the player because who could afford a VHS player back in the 80s, you know?
Yeah, well, they were about £300, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So we rented it for like a $5 for the week, and then putting a deposit down for like £25, and then you could essentially keep a customer like that. I remember VHS shops doing that back in the day.
And so if you paid a $5, was that a $5 paid off the total price? Like if you paid it for like 2 years?
Oh no, it wasn't like a rent to buy. It was just renting. You just rented it for a week at a time.
So, nice.
Yeah, you could keep bringing it back to people over and over again. It wasn't even like it wasn't that whole layaway thing. It was just you rented a tape player.
But I tell you what, see around that era of like electronics designs, I bet you every single one of that equipment still worked.
And probably doesn't have any protection on it, so you can just copy tapes as well.
Well, yeah.
That was the best thing about them.
I mean, I've got VHSs and TVs at home from like the 1980s, and they're still working perfectly. Whereas you get like an LCD TV from like 2002.
That's how big of a gift that was. That's the reason why I was like, this is just a small item from our Cuban creator. Yeah. Like, these things still work.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably still playing.
It's a big gift.
And the one other thing, the 3-week pre-record, do you remember having to look up the TV listens and get the wee number? Like about 2 weeks ahead, and you'd have to type it into the VCR. See, Ash wouldn't remember this, a bit younger than us. You had to type it into the VCR, like a little code would be like 8 or 9 digits or something, and the video would know that was okay, BBC 2, 10 p.m. Friday.
And that was easier than just putting the time in.
Which yes, it was, because you didn't have any. All you had was 2 buttons on the front to go through all the navigation. So you like to do time was tap minute by minute until you got the time that you want to start. And if you missed it, you have to do the lap up again. Yeah, and I don't mean like lap it back from that beginning of that hour. Lap it from the beginning of that day.
So you just went to Radio Times and they had to read numbers down the bottom. You just punch in the number and it would series record for you. So it was Sky Plus, well before Sky Plus, like.
Like Siri, record that.
And yeah, it worked just as well. Like as long as you had a blank tape in the machine.
Which was the biggest problem.
I love Ted's reaction when he gets his present from the Cuban priest. He obviously thinks it's a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
When he sees the shape of it,
looks so good.
and it's like it's a tradition at Christmas. It's like all the presents are handed around to like the older adults.
Well,
And,
sure, can you remember that actually being a thing just for the priests as well, whenever they came to visit?
just having a bottle of whiskey.
Having a bottle of son.
I don't remember that myself now in my household, but it might have been.
It might have been definitely in my case because we're like bar owners and that kind of thing. So it was one of those.
Right. Okay. Right. So
It wasn't it wasn't a big thing, but it was just like, oh, Father, would you like a wee drink? And, well, you might as well take the whole bottle with you.
yeah, but,
You've already opened it. I mean, we kept one just for you.
and of course he's coming home with a boot full of fucking booze, like just going house to house. That was a big tradition in Christmas, was just the passing of the whiskey. Everyone just got the other person a bottle of Jameson's, and they all knew exactly what it was. The shit was just a perfect cylinder, like.
Yeah, except for the one person who was evil enough to give you a bottle of bells or something instead. Or powers.
Oh, bastards. We are going to play a clip though. It's going to be an introduction to Mrs Doyle. I need to inform you about this, Derm. I've been keeping a running tally of the amount of times Mrs Doyle says, go on.
You're going to have a big number for this now?
Well, you think that? I'm convinced it's not actually that much. I think that catchphrase has been attributed to her rather than actually being wheeled out every
Play
episode.
again, Sam. Beat me up, Scotty. It's one of those.
Yeah, she does actually. She obviously says it.
Yeah.
She said it twice in the first episode, and I'm going to see how many times now she said it this
Right.
time.
Give the dings for it.
Yeah, that's it. That's the creativity of it. Like, they didn't just hammer out, go on, go on, go on.
Which I think was more of a thing that was like a publicity thing. They might have actually, like, it would have been the things where maybe an episode way on she does it because the person's repeating back to her over and over again. But that was the only instance it might have had.
I do think there is an episode somewhere down the line where she says it about 4 or 5 times in a row. Our series count now is 3 times in 3
So
episodes.
one per episode, essentially.
Yeah,
for an alcohol one per episode.
Wait, okay, so that does make it pretty catchphrasey then so far, but I think the average actually goes much lower than that. And we do have a pivotal speech about, again, go back to the fact that this was supposed to be the first episode. Ted wants to know if Bishop Brennan is here to send them back to their own parishes. So we actually get a lot more background as to why they're actually on the island. So if you'd like to cue that up, then Ash, nuns are people too.
Nuns are people too. It's okay to date in as long as you don't get into a habit.
He's here all week, folks.
That's not representative of my normal content.
So the 3 priests have all had backstories. Father Jack has had this wedding in Athlone, and he seems very reminiscent of the memory of that because his face lights up when he thinks about the wedding in Athlone. So
I've got a wild feeling that the memories of Athlone are somebody's marriage got ended because he decided to actually take prima nocta.
Prima nocta.
You know what prima nocta is?
I don't actually know.
It's whenever it was an old trait whenever kings would actually go to sleep with the wife before the husband got to get married them. So the priest took prima nocta.
Oh yes,
Braveheart, isn't it?
Braveheart. That's it. Yeah. The money is mentioned for the first time. The money it's not resting on his count just yet. But Ted went to Vegas, ostensibly taking a small child's charity money. She was supposed to go to Lourdes. Now, people who don't know, Lourdes is extremely holy.
Holy site.
Yeah, it's a holy site. It's particularly holy in the Catholic Church. Apparently, the Lady of Fatima saw their Mother Mary there, St Bernadette. I might be getting these all mixed up. Please rush in to correct me.
It's in France.
It's in France. It's south of France. It's in the Pyrenees. I don't know how high up or anything. I have been there.
Like I've been there, but
Totally
memories
not.
just
Yeah, I was totally
Did
nonplussed
you
by the
go
place.
under the water? Did you go in holy water?
I remember walking along
near
a cliff.
water.
I remember walking along a cliff and having to have my hands pressed against the cliff the whole time and thinking, this is absolute idiocy. What am I doing? But there was there's pilgrimages to Lourdes every year from every village in Ireland.
I think of it as essentially just an excuse to have your own version of the Canterbury Tales. It's a pilgrimage, like whatever people do whenever they're there. It's like Vegas,
Yeah,
what goes in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in Lourdes stays in Lourdes.
Yeah.
And well, between you and God as well. But it's like I think the implication is they took the child to Las Vegas instead of Lourdes.
Was it not that
You went to Las Vegas and the child was meant to go to Lourdes, or the fact that he may have taken the child to Las Vegas?
Yeah, I think Ted took the money and went to Las Vegas.
By the way,
It wouldn't have worked out with the money. It cost a lot to get to Vegas. Loads. That's not a lot of cash to work with.
I'm sure Ryanair were probably doing it for about 150 quid back then.
in '98.
Yeah, Ryanair's been going a right while.
Good God, I can only remember actually when they started.
See, when Ryanair first started, their big deal was that they were flying from Dublin to London for £120 as it was in the time, which is about a third of the price that Aer Lingus were doing it, and it completely changed Ireland's
air travel in general.
Yeah, well, Ireland's relation to everything all of a sudden.
That's a travel hub. But the fact that he disappeared off to Las Vegas, I am going to give Ted the benefit of the doubt, and he was just trying to increase the money. You know, he's taking the funds to go and raise himself more cash, and the roll of the dice just went wrong for him. He isn't a bad man.
Maybe he did take the kid, and the kid wanted to go to Vegas.
Yeah, or essentially, if you think you're going to have a last wish, where do you want to go? Lourdes or Vegas? Vegas.
Maybe what happened was he went to the airport and he was looking down the list of the venues. Las Vegas, and just the boards are so complicated you can't sort of keep.
He just got onto the wrong side, and he'd already arrived. And what can you do then?
And you wouldn't stop a priest from getting a plane.
Exactly. Yeah. In that time period, the respect for the priests was strong enough that you would have stopped
priest with a child. That looks like a good image.
Taking them out of the country.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Dougal gets referred to as a cabbage by them, and he had a Blackrock Incident. There were only nuns, and I have searched about this. There was actually a convent in Blackrock, the Carmelite nuns.
Did it blow up because it's that way? That would be a bizarre reference to truth.
Well, you do say this. It closed in 1997, which is about a year and a half after this episode aired.
Does it say why?
It's just they ran out of. There were 7 nuns at the end, so
they ran out of nuns. We're all out of nuns. Well, we imported penguins, but they didn't do the same job.
The amount of lives that were put at risk by Dougal's actions clearly had a knock-on effect. But Blackrock is. If it's the same Blackrock I'm thinking of, where Carmelite nuns is, it's actually a very well off part of Dublin, and historically always has been. Mm-hmm. So Dougal had quite a good start in his priest career. He could have had a nice wee number going. I'm sure Ted would have given his right arm to get that.
Be down in Blackrock.
Yeah, Blackrock's in South Dublin City, and it's like it is one of the richest areas of Dublin, which necessarily means one of the richest areas.
Does it seem or feel like that maybe Dougal got shoved in there hoping that he wouldn't make a big deal, and then he made a lot of noise while he was there unintentionally just by being Dougal, and then that's why they had to get him the hell out of Dublin.
Well, see, I'd imagine a place like that, to be a priest is probably a piss easy number. Like, all you have to do is just show up at 11 o'clock every Sunday and do a few funerals, and that's you sorted. Like, you don't have to actually go into the community and try and get heroin addicts off the needle.
I've always had a mild theory that Dougal was essentially like the son of somebody who just wanted him to put him in an easy place in the priesthood, and we'll put him aside.
They mentioned another cult sci-fi film. They're actually racking up quite a big number of these. Flatliners.
Yeah, yeah. I love that movie.
So give us a quick rundown of
what Flatliners is about.
Yeah.
Oh, essentially Flatliners is about a bunch of people who get thrills from going into the brainscape of persons whenever they're actually just about to die. So essentially it's when you flatlined, you've actually got this opened up mind-bending experience, and essentially it's like nightmares and stuff that happen in it. It's Kiefer Sutherland doing the Lost Boys via brain chemistry. Jack watching that puts my respect for Jack as a movie fan like, amazingly up, especially considering his choice in movies after this, which is a weird choice for Jack to be sitting watching anyway, like just to be near the point of death.
Maybe he's discussing spiritual terms and mortality and stuff.
I know, it's actually like or that he's a living zombie.
But speaking of cinema, we do have another clip. Cultural cinema doesn't seem to go down as well in Craggy Island as maybe Flatliners would. So if you can tell us, if you show us,
it's really difficult, especially considering part of my oeuvre is Japanese films and Asian cinema and stuff. Whenever I talk about them and animation as well, like there's getting people to sit down to watch 24 episodes of anything is difficult. Getting them to watch 24 episodes of something that's not in their language, fairly difficult. Things that are 24 episodes that are not in their language and have no cultural touchstones whatsoever.
Yeah.
Jesus. And walk out of the room.
Dougal decides that maybe they should have a quick watch of Passion of St Tibulus just before they actually start the protest, just in case it's the next of commitments.
You can't get offended by it until you actually completely understand the most offensive material you've ever seen. I mean, that's the whole point of it.
Too many times things are just protested against before they actually know the content of it.
Yeah, mostly just from hearsay and unknown knowledge in a lot of cases.
The one thing that springs directly to mind is the life of Brian. I remember Michael Palin and John Cleese on a chat show, and there is a vicar of some sort. The life of Brian would have been absolutely groundbreaking as far as hitting the church back then.
Yes, in England. Exactly. Almost a parallel for that for Father Ted in general.
Palin just turned around and after this priest has gone this massive diatribe about how so sacrilegious it is, just turned around and goes, "Have you seen it?"
Right.
And the priest goes, "No, I wouldn't see it. Of course I wouldn't."
Yeah.
It's like, well, what can you say then? You're just making this up.
You literally have no basis for your opinion.
Yeah, exactly. At least Dougal wanted to see if it was the next commitment.
Which is probably the most intelligent thing you decide in the entire episode. Is like, well, sure, Ted, we would better to know what it is.
Yeah, we have to know what we're actually protesting about.
Yeah.
The Commitment, of course, is a Roddy Doyle film about a soul band in Dublin. Have you actually seen it?
Yeah, of course I have.
Yeah.
There's plenty of reasons why I've seen that movie. I used to get crap about looking like Andrew Strong from that
Andrew
film.
Strong, he's the big singer.
Yeah, the big singer. I used to have the ponytail and the hair and everything.
Right,
yeah, no, I used to get that quite a lot.
Yeah, I'll just mention, actually, me and Derm know each other way back. We were in the same school and everything. You were a few years ahead of me. But we know each other from going way back.
And whenever I had hair. That's the easiest way. That's how far back when I had hair.
But yeah, The Commitments, I mean, it was the biggest film event in Ireland ever in the fact that it was so successful. It was just about, other ones in Dublin just starting a band.
The Commitments as a film was an amazing piece of filmmaking, just for the fact that it showed life in Dublin really well. And it wasn't intentionally funny, but it was comedic. It wasn't intentionally hard-hitting, but it showed harshness.
Yeah.
It had a lot of things that made it a very realist film for what it was, even though it was a bit of a flight of fancy in the way that it's actually like the what the world was for all the people that were playing in it.
Well, I mean, it was a Roddy Doyle book, which is all the sort of subjects he deals with is just working class Dublin. Yeah. As I said, it made $15 million in the US box office, which for an Irish film is absolutely astronomical, because it was probably made on a budget of maybe 200,000 Irish pounds at the time, or something of that number. Yeah. And it also launched Glenn Hansard. He's one of the members of the band. Well, he went on, of course, to Surround the Frames and the Oscar-winning Once musical. So he's gone on to greater, bigger and better things. The cinema owner was played by John Kenny. He will be seen, of course, later in a different role completely in the Eurovision episode. So we're not going to talk too much about him today. But they've done this a number of times where they've used the same actors. We have a running feature which doesn't actually come up today, but it's Spot the Creator or Meet the Maker.
All right, meet your maker.
Meet your maker, where we see Graham or Arthur on screen, and they're playing a multitude of different characters. So they were obviously saving budget every way they could. Oh. But the audience doesn't care.
Yeah,
I think the audience knows that it's the same actor.
Well, now there's websites all around, 100 things wrong with the latest Spider-Man film. Because it's ripped here, and so now people are making a big deal of that. They might think
it is a bigger thing now because of playback. Probably in the 90s it was a lot less so. I remember a story whenever I was in uni chatting about Irish melodrama on stage, and where there's one guy in the crowd got up and shouted at the actor saying, "You're doing it wrong," because he had moved his foot in the wrong position for the stance he was doing. And it's just about an educated audience. It's becoming, because the constant replayability and people's own knowledge of film production means that they're spotting these things.
Yeah, but I mean, does it actually make any difference to your experience of watching Spider-Man? The fact that you saw he was wearing a strap at his right shoulder and then wasn't. It's like, really? I mean, do people really give a shit?
I mean, how many people do they think this was going to reach at the time?
At the time?
Well, this is true as well, yeah. They were probably just hoping, let's please get to 6 episodes and see what happens. They probably had no idea it was going to be still being shot about 21 years later.
Exactly. And that's again the impact. Like they didn't care at the time because they were just hoping for it to be broadcast.
I think that's half the charm as well, is the fact that it was such a, I said before, homemade ethic. It's not the phrase I'm looking for, but you know what I mean. It's like,
I heard Graham Linehan talking about someone in the US tried to remake the IT Crowd, and they recreated the first episode shot for shot, literally shot for shot. And he watched that and was going like, why have they copied that? We didn't know what we were doing. It wasn't like they selected the shots, they just pointed the camera and
we got hard out
like that. And then they had someone in America just going, oh well, I wonder why they've done this, and trying to recreate it exactly.
In generation previous to that, like whenever they tried to remake Red Dwarf, they tried to refine it and then it lost all of its charm because of that. So they're essentially trying to capture charm.
You went to see the film. The film was called The Passion of St Tibulus.
Do you know, there is no St Tibulus, you know that?
Well, I know it now because you did the research for me. So
right, there is no St Tibulus, but there is the tibia and the tibial bone, and I'm almost thinking do you know, it's one of those things where it's like almost a writerly thing, going like, I need to find a name that sounds religious. Tibulus. Passion of the Bone, because it sounds like it's relevant to the movie anyway. So it seems as like they just played with the name a wee bit, because that's the only thing I could get reference to.
Because we're so used to, as Catholics, just having fucking, saints' names just bundled at you, and you're expected to know that, such and such, the patron saint of losing stuff.
I remember a
Saint
few years ago
Anthony.
they actually got rid of some of the saints. They just kind of went, well, you're getting demoted and you two are getting combined together, so...
Yeah, well, the whole process is just supposed to committed to miracles.
Committed to some miracles.
I think it's 3 miracles.
Yeah, I think it was actually like you have to, and they've changed it so it can be posthumous, so you can actually have caused a miracle after you've died.
After you've died.
Some miracles has to have happened because of your actions, but I think it was actually previously to be beatified. It was you only had to do 1. And then to be a saint, it had to be 2 or 3, and that some people just couldn't make it to saint. They didn't have it in them to do more miraculous events.
Well, we went to Christian Brothers school in Oma, and it was founded by the whole Christian Brothers schools was founded by Edmund Rice.
And he was beatified Edmund
Yeah.
Rice before we left.
Yeah, but he's not going to go any further because all he did was open up educational establishments for
Which was a
people.
miracle in Ireland anyway in the first place.
He was saying for that.
Well, he won't get a sainthood because it's not a miracle. The fact that he did it, like, he just, surely that's a bigger achievement than, the.
Bringing education to many people. I mean, it's plenty of questions.
Well, what's
about
St. Patrick's miracles?
Oh, well, I mean...
Vanishing the snakes. This is my thought. If childbirth is a miracle, which is often described as, how many mothers of 3 children should be beatified then? Surely,
I think all of them.
because they've all got 3. They've all got 3 children. So if we could just play us a clip then, Ted. The 2 priests didn't actually like the Passion of St Tibulus. Like, they didn't actually fall into the lust trap, if you want. Like, they genuinely were put off by it.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of things that they may have disliked about it, but
It's not a problem Jack.
Confused.
I think he was just more confused and upset.
It wasn't a problem Jack had, as we found out earlier. The different types of humour that Father Ted actually expands upon, because that obviously was a bit of blue humour.
Yeah.
A bit of innuendo.
About
and
your
everything.
lad.
Yeah. Well, and then you go back to the start of the episode where you find out where Ted's candles come from, and suddenly you've got a gross out humour.
But the fact that they started with gross out humour at the beginning of this episode, which is Father Jack's ears are full of wax, so it's enough to actually have a papal funeral because there's actually that many candles and the house made out of his earwax. It's disgusting. But that's actually a disgusting joke to kind of like start off with, that talking about this afterwards immediately is rebalanced by. I mean, even shows that were designed for younger family audiences, like the Animaniacs, would actually go for the big dirty to the wee dirty, so that they could actually balance it out. So like, if this one gets past people and they don't get too upset by it, nobody's going to care about this.
Right. That's all I wanted to mention, is that it's the first time you hear about that, what these candles are. Like, you are just disgusted by the thought of it, but it is just the right side of the line, that it's not actually going to put people off. Like, it's not going to put. Well, it might put somebody off their dinner, but it
At
wouldn't
the time,
put them, turn their TV over. But that was your line of the show, was it, Ash? The banana.
I just remember watching that as a kid. I don't think I saw it the first time around, but it must be when it's repeated on Channel 4 or something. But the whole thing about the banana, I remember that was hilarious. That was the best bit in that episode for me at the time.
It's again Dougal's misunderstanding.
Yeah, it's a clever joke if you're a little kid.
Yeah.
It's very clever if you're okay. It was also the fact that for Dougal to mistake it for banana as well is a little bit odd.
Yeah, it's like, what situation could there possibly be in where you sort of pass another guy's dick to another person and people thought it was a
Maybe
banana?
that's why it's good for younger people watching it, because you've still got someone who's even stupider than you.
Yeah.
To laugh at.
Yeah.
Well, that was it. Like,
You could be like a 9-year-old or something. Go, idiot.
yeah. It's the 3rd episode in a row where John and Mary have showed up, the 2 shopkeepers, and I didn't realise how prevalent they were at the start, because we've discussed it in the earlier episode. They don't actually show up that much over the course of the series, so they must have front-loaded them a lot in the first few episodes.
Yeah, but from this is me going from memory in the show, that they appear less, but their relationship gets a lot more interesting as the show goes on.
Well, this is the 3rd episode in a row, and it's actually probably the tamest of their sort of tete-a-tetes that they have. And I'd say almost by this point, that joke is starting to wear a bit thin. Maybe they cut it back in the next few episodes. We'll see as we go through the podcast.
Because it wasn't having the impact that it was going to have again and again.
I think when they spread it out a bit more, it has more impact. So we'll see how that develops anyway. But they have showed up in their first 3 episodes, which I was surprised by. And Ted and Dougal's protests seem to be falling on deaf ears.
That's exactly right.
But yeah, so this is two little old ladies have their Tuesday trip to the cinema. They cause a cardinal sin here because they seriously spoiled a massive film. The Crying Game. Have you ever heard of The Crying Game, actually?
I didn't know that was a real film.
It's a big film, and I mentioned The Commitment's being a big deal in America. The Crying Game was a massive deal in America.
Yeah.
It made
Is that an Irish one?
Yeah, the IRA kidnapped a British soldier. The IRA man and the soldier, they start bonding, and it turns out the soldier dies, and the IRA man decides to take it upon himself to help the soldier's girlfriend. Now that's the set of the story, and you think you're going through a story about, you know, soldiers and honour and all this sort of stuff, and then suddenly it turns out that the girlfriend is a man, and you don't find out until the IRA man's about to have sex with her.
He gets his lad out.
And he gets his lad out. So it completely spoilers what was, like, this was massive. This was a massive
deal at
film
the time.
in America. Like, it was $60 million that took in America. Like, it was a huge deal for an Irish
When
film.
is it alright to spoil it? Like, a lot of things would parody Star Wars now and
Yeah,
Father and all
but
that.
it's alright for me saying it now, but this might have been within a year.
Yeah, it was. It would have been about that.
The entire marketing of that film was the big twist. Like, don't spoil the twist, don't spoil the twist. To be going on to chat shows and saying, but what's the big twist, Mr. Actor? And the actor.
Probably still countries that haven't been shown in yet at that time.
At that point, yeah, it probably would have been.
It was actually spoiled for me in a completely random way.
Because we were at the age whenever this episode would have came out that would you been watching The Crying Game?
Well, yeah, I remember recognizing the poster.
I didn't watch The Crying Game until I was in my 20s.
Yeah, same here.
I sat down and watched it, and I knew
It was spoiled for me by a fucking complete, like.
Well, now it's a spoiler for me.
We weren't going to.
and spoiler for everybody who's actually in our audience, but I mean, honestly, the 7-year rule applies.
Yeah, 7 year. I like that.
It's alright now.
But I remember I was looking through IMDb trivia when I first started getting into films. I was just on IMDb for like 4 hours a night, sort of thing. I was just going through the trivia of all the films I'd seen, and one of them was Hot Shots or Hot Shots Part 2 or something. I can't remember. But in the trivia thing, in trivia notes under crazy credits or something, it said, in The Crying Game, the man is a woman.
In the credits of the movie.
Yeah, and I was like, what? Come on, you can't fucking spoiler it like that.
Even as like a peripheral bit of trivia on another website that's actually talking about another film. It's actually, admittedly at this point now, people just have grown to accept that that's what it's about. And anybody who hasn't already seen it should probably.
It is a decent enough film.
The film itself stands on its own without the twist being the important thing. It was just the marketable angle.
From a 2016 point of view, The Crying Game is probably quite ahead of its time.
Yes. Yeah,
because it was the first thing that
was.
actually, like, the way they were marketing it, the actress, I suppose you could say, well, the actor who played the girlfriend was being portrayed as a woman, as a female actor throughout all the publicity and stuff, and people had no idea. Like, I remember,
So it was a guy acting the whole time.
so the character was in drag the whole time.
It was a bloke.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
You know, she was showing her premieres and stuff.
Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, and I remember watching it in uni, and with the intention of having that bomb dropped to everyone who hadn't seen it.
Oh yeah.
What was no one paying attention?
Well, there was a girl who was a lesbian, and she goes, "I bet that guy's a man. I can tell from his hands." There's another bit of music. I've been noticing this in the first 2 episodes as well. We have different little stings of music at different points. When Jack shows up at the cinema, and Ted and Dougal think he's going to show the support, and he's striding along. He's playing along to Magnificent Seven music or something similar. I don't think they were able to get the license to it. But again, like in the actual first episode, I found that Benny Hill music sort of stuck out. This fitted
blends for the moment.
It fits a bit better. Len's about to banish them all around the world and finally, end the series after 3 episodes.
Like a very, very short run series.
Yeah.
You have them all separate from each other, going like, alright, now we're going to follow them in the single narrative tale individually. The threat doesn't work because the show is going to continue on, but it shows him as most villainous, going like, I will tell you your lies.
And the glee he gets of like finding the most inappropriate place to put them.
Yeah.
He enjoys that.
He wants to put Dougal on a mountain.
Yeah.
Like, let's put a man who doesn't know how to actually dress himself on a mountain on his own. That idea of like separating them off from anything that they love and hold dear makes him a horrible person, which makes the payoff so much sweeter.
Yeah.
Let's not forget they've already been punished as well.
Yeah.
They're already on Craggy Island. It's like level 1.
This is the first level of the first circle of hell.
We're actually doing Dante's Inferno.
So I mean, I think this is one of the top 5 episodes. This I'm gonna, like, when we get to the end of this, I'm gonna try and make a list of
Do a
top
top
5,
list of
this is
them,
definitely, I think, going to go into it. I think it's an absolutely brilliant episode, and I think this probably launched Father's Head as not just a new sitcom at the time. I think this launched it to a new level. The sitcoms at the time were like the big ones were Friends and Only Fools and Horses, but that was sort of winding down
as well.
by that point.
But it was on the specials at that point, wasn't it? Even though they didn't have an ongoing series, they just had the specials.
The big Only Fools was in 1996, where he finally became a millionaire. Yeah. So it was sort of towards the end of that. I think this is an absolutely genius episode. Like, there's so many laughs. There's great plot, introducing the characters.
There's migrants, there's environmental kind of stuff, there's characters, the actual, like you said, this feels like it should have been a first episode but wasn't done as the first episode.
I think it's better they didn't.
Yep.
And I think they made a brilliant editorial decision by not making this first episode.
Yeah, I would have been as funny if you didn't know what they were like a bit. It's like Peep Show or something.
Mm-hmm.
You have to watch a few. It's much funnier when you know what the characters are like.
You know how they'll react to situations once they're presented, because you're actually just anticipating their reaction rather than actually just seeing them react. That's why this show works so well.
Exactly. Well, we've been looking at the audience ratings on TVDB. This one gets a 7.8 compared to the 7.9 of last week's episode, which
That's bullshit.
Yeah, I actually last week's episode.
Like Father Stone.
Pretty much everyone last week said it's their least favourite episode.
I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that I do like the dryness, but I mean, I'd be on the side of saying I enjoyed the previous episode. I think this one's amazing, but I just think the Father Stone episode is actually pretty.
You think it's better?
Yeah. But personally, I think it's better, but I could see why people would say this one's better.
When was the last time you saw it?
Last time I saw Entertaining Father Stone would have been probably.
Okay.
Well, it wouldn't have been within the last year. Definitely wouldn't be fresh in my memory. I remember laughing more at it.
I think the character, who was brilliant, lasted longer than the actual episode.
You're right. I know exactly what you mean. That's why I like Father Stone.
Yeah.
And
I'll play the episode because you haven't actually heard it yet, because we haven't been putting these live yet. But I'll play the episode and you can go through why we thought that.
Yeah.
But the character just lived longer than the episode did.
He's stronger than the episode that he starts off in. That makes so much sense.
Whereas this one, the episode is hilarious. You get the two wee pensioners who I completely forgot about, and they're chatting about one of their husband's dicks, like, so they obviously both had a look like.
You want to use one knob gags?
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's everything in life is about the big purple vein dick joke.
Well, not quite.
Well, no, it's more of a rounded top.
Yeah. But so thank you very much for coming down here, Derm.
No worries at all. I had a great blast at this.
Yeah, and we'll hopefully have it back at some point.
More and more.
We do intend to go through all 24 episodes and a Christmas special, so we'll be doing this long term. I'd also like to thank.
Just book me in a couple of weeks in advance, just so I can.
Yeah, well, exactly. Your second choice to Richard Herring. Just so you know that. Well, Richard Herring's playing Belfast. We're about to go see him live in a couple of hours, but. No, but thanks very much, definitely, and thank you very much for Ash as well, and his theme tune, which I didn't credit him for last week.
That's terrible, man. I love it. It's great. I like that tune. I want to copy that.
And we still need to hear some sort of catchphrase. I've been saying "bless you" at the end of episodes, but I don't think it works.
No, I like that.
Bless you.
It's Sunday.
It is Sunday. The parishioners need to know that they're.
I think as an opener, it was like this morning, or my congregation would probably start. But I think it's more of an opener thing rather than actually a closer.
Well, yeah. So thanks very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. And you can catch us next week when we're discussing competition time. I made the BBC. So we'll listen back to that, and hopefully you'll join us for that then. Thank you very much, and bless you.
Bye bye.